Life often presents us with trials and challenges, moments when it feels like the world is against us and all hope is lost. But in those moments, something extraordinary can happen. Our faith can grow stronger, and we can discover the beauty of God's plan for our lives. Today, I want to share the inspiring story of Joseph, a young man whose journey takes him from the depths of betrayal to the heights of redemption. Joseph's life teaches us that even when the path seems dark, God's light is always guiding us. Before we dive into his story, ask yourself, have you ever felt like life wasn't fair? Like you were misunderstood or mistreated for no reason? If so, Joseph's story will resonate deeply with you. It's a tale of faith, perseverance, and the power of trusting in God, even when it seems like all is lost. So sit back and let's journey together into the life of Joseph, a story of a dreamer who never stopped believing, even in the darkest of times. Joseph's story begins with a dream so vivid and profound it shaped the course of his life. Born as the 11th son of Jacob, Joseph was the beloved child of his father. Jacob lavished him with affection, even gifting him a richly ornamented robe, a coat of many colors. This symbol of favoritism created a rift between Joseph and his brothers. They saw him not as a sibling, but as a rival, a threat to their standing in the family. Yet Joseph remained undeterred. At just 17 years old, he shared his God-given dreams with his family. Visions of greatness, where his brothers and even his parents would bow before him. To Joseph, these dreams were promises of a future ordained by God. To his brothers, they were the ultimate insult. Jealousy soon turned to rage. One day, while Joseph was sent by Jacob to check on his brothers tending sheep in the fields, they plotted against him. "Here comes the dreamer," they sneered. Their hatred boiled over, and they conspired to kill him. But Reuben, the eldest, persuaded them otherwise. "Let's not shed blood," he said. Instead, they threw Joseph into a dry cistern, intending to leave him there to die. As Joseph sat in that cold, dark pit, he must have felt a flood of emotions: fear, confusion, and betrayal. The brothers he loved had turned against him. The dreams that once filled him with hope now seemed distant and meaningless. But even in that moment of despair, Joseph's faith did not waver. He knew God's promises were true, even if he couldn't see the path ahead. I want to welcome you to the Radiant Resolutions podcast. Before long, the brothers changed their plan. Spotting a caravan of Ishmaelite traders on their way to Egypt, they sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. Stripped of his robe and stripped of his identity as Jacob's favored son, Joseph became a slave in a foreign land. Imagine the journey to Egypt. Each mile must have felt like a descent into the unknown. Yet Joseph clung to the one constant in his life: his faith in God. He may have lost his family, his freedom, and his future, but he had not lost the presence of God. In what ways am I so inferior? Even our winds, paying for a host and son. On arriving in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Though his status had been reduced to that of a servant, Joseph distinguished himself through hard work and integrity. The Bible records that the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Potiphar recognized Joseph's exceptional abilities and placed him in charge of his entire household. Everything Joseph touched seemed to flourish, and Potiphar's household was blessed because of him. For a moment, it seemed as though Joseph's life was turning around. But just as Joseph began to find stability, another storm loomed on the horizon. Potiphar's wife took notice of him. She saw his handsomeness and charisma and became infatuated. Day after day, she attempted to seduce him, but Joseph refused her advances. His moral compass remained firm, grounded in his reverence for God. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? He told her. But her persistence turned to malice. When Joseph once again rejected her, she falsely accused him of trying to assault her. Her accusations enraged Potiphar, and Joseph was thrown into prison. For the second time, Joseph found himself in a pit, this one even darker and more isolating than the first. Yet, even here, the Bible says, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Joseph was not forgotten by God. In prison, Joseph's faith and character shone brightly. He was entrusted with responsibilities, and his leadership skills flourished even in confinement. It was here that he encountered Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, who were also imprisoned. Both had troubling dreams, and Joseph, through God's wisdom, interpreted them. Interpretations belong to God, he said humbly, before revealing the meanings of their dreams. His words proved true. The cupbearer was restored to his position while the baker was executed. Joseph pleaded with the cupbearer to remember him and advocate for his release, but the cupbearer forgot him once he returned to Pharaoh's service. 2 more years passed, 2 years of waiting, wondering, and holding on to faith. For most, such prolonged suffering might have led to bitterness or despair, but not Joseph. He trusted that God was working, even in the silence. Then came the moment that would change everything. Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams. Visions of 7 fat cows devoured by 7 thin cows, and 7 healthy heads of grain swallowed by 7 scorched heads of grain. None of Pharaoh's magicians or wise men could interpret the dreams. It was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew in prison who had interpreted his dream. Joseph was summoned to Pharaoh's court. Standing before the most powerful man in Egypt, Joseph humbly declared, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." With God's guidance, Joseph revealed that the dreams foretold 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. He advised Pharaoh to store surplus grain during the years of plenty to prepare for the years of scarcity. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's wisdom and insight that he appointed him as second in command over all of Egypt. Joseph, once a betrayed brother and falsely accused prisoner, now held immense authority, second only to Pharaoh. During the years of famine, Joseph's leadership saved countless lives. People from surrounding nations came to Egypt to buy grain, including Joseph's own brothers. When they appeared before him, they did not recognize him, but Joseph recognized them. It would have been easy for Joseph to exact revenge. After all, these were the same brothers who had thrown him into a pit and sold him into slavery. But Joseph chose forgiveness. Overwhelmed with emotion, he revealed his identity to them and said, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Joseph's story is a testament to God's sovereignty and grace. What his brothers intended for harm, God used for good. Lessons from Joseph's journey. Joseph's life teaches us profound lessons about faith, perseverance, and forgiveness. God's presence in trials, even in the darkest moments, whether in the pit, in slavery, or in prison, Joseph knew that God was with him. This awareness gave him the strength to endure and excel no matter the circumstances. Faith transcends circumstances. Joseph's faith was not dependent on his situation, whether he was a servant, a prisoner, or a ruler. His trust in God remained steadfast. Forgiveness reflects God's grace. When Joseph forgave his brothers, he demonstrated a heart transformed by God's love. Forgiveness does not erase the pain of betrayal, but it allows God's grace to flow through us and bring healing. God's plans are greater. Joseph's life is a reminder that God's plans are often beyond our comprehension. What may seem like setbacks are often setups for greater purposes. Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace is a powerful narrative of redemption. It reminds us that no matter how dire our circumstances may seem, God is always at work. He can transform our darkest moments into testimonies of his grace and faithfulness. When life feels overwhelming, remember Joseph's story. Don't lose hope. Trust that God is with you, guiding you through every valley and every storm. I would not shy. This book is such a tense read. It's like Joseph, your trials can become triumphs, and your faith can shine as a beacon of hope for others. So far, my dreams have been true.